Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are pleased to present a webinar on dementia for congregations. Just to take a minute and talk about ALOA, if you are unfamiliar with ALOA, we are a nationwide resource to churches trying to strengthen ministry for older adults. So we work with congregations to provide more intentional and dynamic ministry for the adults in their congregations and in their communities. And we also work to encourage older adults to affirm their gifts and keep using them, not saying, I'm retired, I don't have to do things anymore, or I don't want to do things anymore, because there are still plenty of gifts that they can use to serve their family and their church and their community. I would like to introduce Debbie Savage. She works with congregations as well as individuals to help them cope with dementia and with those to be a friendly community in their congregation for those with dementia. So without taking any more time, I will turn it over to Debbie.
Well, thank you. And I really do appreciate as people are still coming in. Thank you for having me. And yes, this is really kind of exciting for me to talk to you about how we in this area have created dementia-friendly congregations. So this is Dementia 101 for congregations. And what we like to think about is becoming dementia-friendly. And Carol and I were talking earlier, and becoming dementia-friendly doesn't mean that it's just isolated to folks living with dementia. I kind of believe that if we have a more compassionate viewpoint about people that are struggling, and as we get older, we do struggle with certain things. We're not so quick with our response. We're not so great with our hearing, maybe with our walking mobility. So we want to create more of a compassionate culture that looks at seniors, not, like Carol said, as an asset, not as a deficit. We want to keep people active and living in their environment and social. So a couple of things that we do talk about, what to get people more aware of dementia, we need to explain what is happening so that they're not so afraid of a person that is struggling. And that's all we like to say is they're struggling. When we place names on things, it really takes away from who they really are. We really like to hear the person's name. And I will start by saying how I got into talking about dementia or even educating people on dementia was because of my experience with my former husband, Albert. He developed a form of dementia 5 years into our marriage, and he passed away in 2010. The reason that I say not my husband, but Albert, is because I want people to understand that he is a real person. Anybody that's living with forms of dementia are real people there. So by putting a name on that, it not only allows them to have dignity, but it allows them to be Albert or Ed or Debbie or anybody else. So part of what we talk about that changes a lot of things is, what is dementia? Well, dementia is, as you see on the screen, it's an umbrella term for symptoms. It changes your brain, it changes the structure and the characteristic and chemical structure of your brain. But it's the things that we think about the most. Everybody, if I were to ask anybody, they would most definitely say that it's memory loss. Short-term memory, of course, because there's some repetition there. I spend my day listening to my person repeat the same question over and over again. How about getting lost, going to familiar places? That's a common symptom of dementia. How about personality changes and mood changes? They may be more frustrated. You may see exhibiting of anxiety or depression. These are symptoms. What you might also see is that they've lost their processing skills. They don't have the same ability to process, rationally think, They don't have the same ability of sequencing certain types of tasks. So you may see them start something, but they don't know how to finish it. These are all symptoms of dementia underneath the large umbrella. Underneath, as you can see here, there's several types of forms of dementia, but the most common is going to be Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is going to be diagnosed probably 40 to 50. They have here even over up to 70% more. But there's several others that in this particular slide, these are the most characteristic by behaviors or symptoms that we see outside of just memory loss. A vascular dementia is going to be common if we have folks that have had strokes or heart issues, possible alcohol somewhere along in their lives. Lewy body dementia is switching between number 3 and 2 with vascular, but Lewy body has significant forms of hallucinations and delusions. It's a pretty specific type of dementia with those symptoms, and we usually see a higher risk of getting a Lewy body if I have a Parkinson's diagnosis before. That seems to be a higher risk factor for that type of dementia. Front temporal dementia is really increasing quite a bit, and the damage is in the front part of the brain. And we don't see memory issues quite as frequently as early. But underneath all this umbrella, you might see 4 or 5 most common of the dementias here. But what's really insignificant is there's more than 100 now. So we may never know what kind of a dementia you have, other than the fact that your brain is actually shrinking and that you are having trouble with the things that we described here. So after having a diagnosis, there is lots of things that are changing with a person. They have mental deficits, and those are what we just said, a loss of memory. It changes their short-term memory, but they may have more retention in their long-term memory. It may stay intact a lot longer. So you may see a person that wants to go home. When we start to ask them to tell me about where they want to go, you'll hear them describe a home that might be where their parents were, where they grew up. So that's telling you where they are in the journey at that moment. That may change. The ability to learn and lack of comprehension. The ability to learn is really different because they learn in a different way. They learn based on feelings, and they learn based on how environments make them feel. So it's not the way that we normally think of learning, but they still can learn. Mood changes, personality changes. There's a list there of loss of trust. We go back to learning based on how things make me feel. Good judgment. It can be any number of things that are in the home that are no longer identifiable for what they used to be used for. I had somebody just talk to me today that a person is trying to drink baby oil or is trying to use Vaseline in not the greatest ways. We have guns and scissors. We lose the ability of understanding what these products are used for safely. Language skills change because what we see in dementia is that the left side of our brain is affected first in the process of this disease. And what happens is that we will have words that are going to be harder for us to pull. It might be that I don't know someone's name. It might be that I don't know what I really want for breakfast, but I know that it might be round, or it might be square, or it was yellow. I might not be able to identify by the word that I would like eggs and sausage, but it will start with words. And they'll get pretty upset. Now, if we can cover for them, it may be acceptable, but those words will grow into sentences, and then their language skills become very impaired, and we can't communicate or keep up with the conversation that we are doing with someone else. We might start with what I remember, go back to that long-term memory. Um, Sense of time and place was something that happened in my particular case with Albert. I was working full time, and when I would leave to go to work, he did not realize that I might have just left or if it was 5 or 6 or 8 hours ago. So he doesn't know how much time has passed, and he doesn't know how long or short I've been gone. And a lot of times, what happens in that situation is that we will start to go look for the person. So we hear some of our folks, our care partners, say that I feel like I've got a Velcro. This person doesn't leave me. I go into the bathroom and they're knocking on the door. They don't know how long you've been gone. They don't know where you are. And they actually haven't remembered that you said I was going to the restroom or that I was going to work. So they become very fearful. How am I going to manage being here? How am I going to do this all by myself? So I have to start finding you. And pretty soon, the caregivers and care partners get very worn out because they can't even take a breath. So when that happens, a lot of times what you'll see is their environment, especially if they used to be able to stay at home, that may no longer be a viable way to care for a person. They may not be able to stay at home. The behavior that you see from all of this loss is that they become afraid, confused. They do lose facial expressions and facial recognition. So, in some cases, our care partners, especially our spouses, get very, very caught up with the fact that my person doesn't remember me. And I really want to assure folks that are in this journey of dementia that your person does remember you. In my case, Albert lost his language skills very early because he had a concussion on the left side of his brain. But I was always aware that he knew me. He didn't say my name, but there was always a gesture. If it was a smile, if it was the outstretched arms for a hug, there was always a recognition. So, what people do remember in this journey of dementia, it may not be what you do for them, how you do it, but it will be how you make them feel. They really don't lose that. So the facial recognition is something that happens when they become younger in their view and their facial recognition. But unfortunately, our care partners still age. So that's where some of the confusion comes from. Some of the physical deficits that we see are very prevalent and very profound to some folks. Now, what we're talking about is things that are happening to a person in probably the middle part of the journey. And you notice that I said very cautiously, not stages. I don't like to use stages because this disease is so interchangeable. One minute we can have our care partners say that they're having a really good day, and then the next minute we can say they're having a really bad day. So we don't like to really utilize stages. This is a journey, and we don't know how long it's going to last, and we don't know what kind of things are going to change. But the things that will change are everything that keeps us alive, as we are right now. All our senses are being affected. So we understand through research that our peripheral vision is going to be affected. What that looks like to most of us, even if we don't have glasses, is that I will start to lose my depth perception. We really try to consult with families that this might be a time that we start to lessen the need for the vehicle and driving. Because when I lose my depth perception and my peripheral vision, it's pretty unsafe at that time to see what's coming from the left or the right, my responses are going to be slower, or when I'm driving, the things are coming by a lot faster. So I lose that perception. A lot of times, our care partners will help their person drive by saying, slowing down, taking a left, it's clear, you're okay, it's a green light. But we really need to work with how do we meet their needs. So every type of behavior that you see from your person could be an unmet need, and we can figure that out. They may have difficulty with balance. They may have hearing issues, but it's different than our hearing issues. It's not hearing issues that we understand as, oh, they have a hearing aid, so we know that there's a problem. What they do have is a comprehension. So you can see that I might be talking a little bit slower. I try to enunciate and stay as clear as I possibly can. And I usually don't have anybody having a hard time comprehending me. When we start to communicate, we may want to use cues a little bit more. We may want to use visuals. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Those types of things. Are you cold? Are you hot? Comprehension is what they actually take in as information. And what we do know is that they drop every fourth word. When you start dropping words in a sentence, they don't automatically make any sense anymore. They have a change in their auditory functions. They lose the ability to determine where the directions of sound is coming from. What that looks like to us is we may not always be able to see if we hear an emergency vehicle if we're driving. We're looking around for where this noise is coming from, and we can't really determine that. A person living in this journey of dementia has a very difficult time if I have a TV on, if something is too loud, and then you try to talk to me. I may not be able to understand and hear or figure out where this noise is coming from. So we need to be in front of them. And that changes even if I have a person that I know has some deterioration in their vision, anyways, like a macular degeneration. So we can make concessions for just about everything. So we need to be in front of the person. As I said, with a loss of peripheral vision, we can't be standing beside a person and expect that they're going to be able to hear us or see us. Poor hygiene, because I lose my sense of smell. A lot of our folks don't shower as much. A lot of our folks that are living in the journey of dementia might pick up the same clothes that they took off. And we say, all they do is wear the same clothes. They do that because they don't have to think about what they have to wear. An example, Albert all of a sudden decided he wasn't able to get dressed any longer. I couldn't figure out why that was because he was perfectly capable of doing that. What I realized is he had too much stimulation in the closet. So I switched his field of vision so that when he opened the closet, all he could see was just a few pairs of pants, a few shirts, maybe one or two shoes, one belt, and that was about it, one jacket. So he then could start to get dressed again. Loss of appetite comes from the loss of smell or the sense of smell. But it also has a lot to do with why it's really dangerous to have people live alone and not checking on them. Poor hygiene is what we can see and smell because we see that they're dressed differently or the same, their clothes are dirty, or they have an odor. Well, it's gone way beyond that if we can actually see that. A loss of appetite is if someone doesn't necessarily smell food, who wants to eat? But on the flip side, if I'm living alone, I don't realize that food is spoiled. because I can't smell. So they will usually not eat and drink appropriately. And we need to be eating and drinking, of course, to keep our strength up and to keep our bodies functioning. But it's also, we need that food and that nutrition to heal. If we happen to be diabetic, we will see a change in being able to heal properly. The inability to have spoiled food or milk or anything that is outdated, if nobody is there to check on me, I don't know what to do. There we go with the sequencing. I don't know how to figure that out. We see a loss of motor skills, and that's all in my hand. So what we see is these three fingers in my hand is what dictates buttoning of my shirt, combing my hair, holding a toothbrush, holding a pen. It's all controlled with these three fingers, even opening up a bottle of water. If I lose the dexterity and the skill in my hand, you will see a lot of things change. I might not have the ability to groom as well as I used to. So you may see my hair isn't combed, or you may see that my teeth are no longer getting brushed. You may see that I'm wearing t-shirts, or maybe I'm in my pajamas longer. Maybe I'm no longer wearing shoes that I have to tie because I need these three fingers to skillfully do that. So when I do that, I'm back to my poor hygiene because now you understand that I'm not brushing my teeth or combing my hair. Neuropathy comes from other diseases, like I just mentioned, as diabetics. But we also lose feeling in our feet with this particular journey. And what we will see is we will only have feeling in the bottoms of the ball or the balls of our feet. And when that happens, you see me changing my gait. I will bend over more. I will be looking at the ground more because I'm trying to balance on the balls of my feet. So, all of this combined, you will see a loss of weight, inappropriate dress for the climate because I'm not sure what to wear, how to wear it. There's a lot of things going on in your person, and primarily, you may not even see that it's happened. This is not changing. So, how can you be the change? This is really why Ed and myself, my partner and myself, really enjoy presenting this particular workshop. It's called the ABC of Dementia. So some of the things that I've just talked about, we're going to go over in the ABC of Dementia. Whoops. We're going to have a 2-hour workshop that will give us more of an overview of the symptoms. What is the difference? What is actually changing in the person? The abilities that the person is losing. But you heard what Carol said. There is always something that somebody has left to offer, and that doesn't change with dementia. In fact, people with dementia, as everyone, needs a purpose. And being in a congregation, there's a lot of opportunity and options of feeling purposeful. So, with our persons living with dementia, the more that we can provide you with what is happening, the better off you're going to be able to find that little niche for that person that will feel successful. If it's serving in fellowship, if it is holding out and giving programs out, if it is greeting, there is a number of things that can happen. How we better understand this person is how we're going to better respond. And responding is a whole lot better than reacting. Nobody likes to be yelled at, but our persons living with dementia are really, truly struggling. Um, they're doing the best that they can, and they're really trying to fit in. We can give them a really safe environment. And that's another reason that we really enjoy presenting this workshop in congregations, because that is a safe environment for them, becoming resources in the journey of dementia for the care partners. We do role play. How are we going to best approach them? Effectively work through communication, approach, touch, and voice. Some folks really like to communicate. Others are a little bit more quiet, so they can do other things. But there is always something that a person can do. Most of what we see in our caregivers is that, or care partners, is they look at the things that they're losing. And that is perfectly acceptable for a little while, because we have to pull them out of that. If they always look at the glass being half empty and what they can't do, they're not going to be very optimistic about what they will be able to do and what they can do. And that's where a third party, such as congregations or other ministries or other people in general, can help with the care partners, because they can see something a little differently when they're not so emotionally attached or entwined in the caregiving role. These are just a few samples of 10 tips on how we talk to people, and you've seen some of the things that we have said in the previous slides. You've understood and seen how I speak a little bit differently. I might do a little bit more cueing. I do shake my head because I want that positive interaction with that person. Things like the TV is hard to hold their attention. The TV is distracting, but we do utilize that as, quote, a babysitter when we need some time to get things done. We need to avoid large groups, or in types of restaurants, we might want to avoid the really heavy times of mealtime. Maybe we do what we all moved to Florida for, is the early bird specials. I used to joke when I came here with my parents to visit my grandparents, and we could never understand, but they always wanted to go to dinner at 3:30 or 4, and but that's what they did. But that is a much quieter time in our restaurants. It's a much quieter time where there's not so much activity. Arguing, when we want to correct a person, it's really hurtful to that person. So we really need to figure out how to be in the journey with them. And I know that it's very difficult to do that, but we need to validate them. If somebody needs to go home or somebody needs to get outside, we may just have to repeat that question back to them. You want to go home now? Is that what I'm hearing? And of course, they may respond, but maybe you can say, I want to take you home, but I just put some soup on. Can we have a little bite to eat and I'll take you home? Would that be okay? So, what we're trying to do is validate that they have a need, but we also want to redirect that need, because they don't want to go home. They just want to be out of where they're at. When we ask an open-ended question, and a lot of us do that by asking, what would you like for dinner? When we ask an open-end question, we're probably not going to get the answer. That's way too much to be asked of. So what we might say is, I was really thinking of a chicken taco salad. You love all that, would that be okay with you? How about it? Would you like that? They have more of an opportunity of answering yes or no. Primarily, they'll probably say that sounds good. It's the same thing that we ask, how are you doing today? Instead, we might learn to greet that person as, gosh, it's really good to see you. I'm glad you made it. Because then I can say, I'm glad I'm here too. Because what they did is they just mirrored and repeated what you said. And that makes me feel like I fit in. The bottom line is we want them to be acceptable, because when they feel accepted and comfortable, you won't lose two people at a time. The caregivers will be able to continue to come and be social at something that they both need. It's really hard to say. I told you that we were going to the doctors and you never remember. Well, my short-term memory isn't working. I'm not building enough roadmaps in there. It's not been long enough for me to retain that. So we always say, I told you so. That's kind of hurtful, but we don't mean to do that. We really need to learn to validate and say, gosh, I'm really sorry. I must have forgot to tell you that today at 9 o'clock it's the doctor. Give me 5 minutes and we'll get ready. That could be something that could change the whole morning for you. Validation. Moving conversations differently is how I explain that to you with maybe I want to go home. Being flexible. Don't don't speak as though this person isn't even here. They may get frustrated, but they want to be included. Keep the conversation as inclusive as possible. It is such a wonderful thing to see a person feeling accepted, feeling as though they have fit in. Doesn't everybody want that? They do have purpose, they do have a benefit for everyone to be there. So let's talk about some of the benefits to the congregations when we offer this 2 hour ABC of dementia. We can either open it up to just your congregation, we can offer it to the community and public surrounding your congregation. What we like to do is also shine that congregation. That's why we like to have the public there, because there's a lot more folks than we realize that are dealing with this journey of dementia. I will tell you that in the state of Florida right now, we have about 580,000 people that are dealing with a form of Alzheimer's and dementia. A really strong statistic that I heard the other day is that is what we say for Alzheimer's. That number might not include the people that we have not included that are living with a form of dementia in some way. With the very first slide that you saw, we're talking about people that may have Alzheimer's. So that number might be a whole lot higher. And in my particular case, I believe that it is a lot higher. It's still only about 1 in 10 people that will get a form of Alzheimer's. But right now, we're going into the baby boomers that have just turned 70, and that 10% is growing. So that number of 580,000 might be a little low, although it's pretty large in its own right. So if we have 2.5 or even 2 care partners per person, we're now way over 1 million people in the state of Florida that are dealing with this. So the benefit to creating a culture of compassion for our folks that are struggling, and when we were talking earlier, and I'm using this from Carol from the Aloha, is that adaptable services. So we can learn to adapt things based on what is the need, just as we do with people with dementia, but there's needs that we have to adapt to all the time. Continued sociability and purpose. You know, we've hit on this all the way through this. The sociability is extremely important. How many of us were feeling a little bit caged in, not vocal because of COVID? What we saw with our folks living with dementia is that because of the lack of sociability, purpose, and with the interaction verbally, we saw a lot of our folks decline in verbal skills. They lost a lot of mobility, or maybe their mobility increased because they were more agitated, more anxious, because they didn't have a routine any longer. And now our caregivers didn't have any resources, so they didn't have any outlets to bring that person to respite. And now this was really 24/7 for them, and they couldn't be everything that they needed to be. So we saw a lot of decline, a lot of loss of weight. What we want to see in congregations is the continued membership to stay active in the congregation. When I mentioned before that if we do not adapt to a person that is struggling, we will see a decline going by two people, which is their care partners. Because if I can't leave that person alone, then I can't be social myself. So we need to have that acceptance in our environment in some way so that we keep both of those folks social and interactive in that environment, whatever the environment is. Becoming a safe environment is already there for congregations. It is a safe environment for both of them, but for everybody that chooses to be there. So we need to continue to keep that safe as we age. As we all know, the median age has increased for our membership, for our people that are going there. We need to find how to keep them coming back. The reason that this whole concept of compassionate culture works in congregations is the familiar routine, the familiar songs. It's part of their muscle memory, it's part of their life, it is part of their past life. So we have seen people thrive when maybe they didn't have communication, they had music. What do we have in congregations but familiar music? The reason this also works is what's retained in a person is in the left side of their brain. It is creativity, it is music, it is rhythm. So that includes a lot of things. Attracting new members that will then allow them to realize that this is probably a safer environment, that they're dementia aware. You can see in this slide that we do have a congregation book that we leave with the congregations. We have posters that we can post to refresh people on what they're looking at. What is some of the signs of a person that's struggling with memory loss? We give you a certificate. We also provide a list of resources that you can utilize. We also have ways of talking to the congregations about creating other types of support groups or resources for people. They don't have to be specific to dementia, but we could have caregiver support groups. We might be able to provide respite for some of the folks so that the caregivers might be able to do some service, or maybe they could go home and take a nap. You will see in this slide that we bring information with us. This information is free and it's from the National Institute on Aging. So we kind of encourage the congregations to create a resource library because there is a safer environment. People will be feeling more comfortable about coming in and maybe opening up that conversation. Coping with dementia will always be a resource, but we want people in their congregations to see what they can do and create different types of resources or support for those folks, which they already have in place. They have music in place. And I did take this creating adaptable services from a conversation that I had with Carol yesterday, which I thought was just a really nice way to open up the fact that there are adaptable services for people that are struggling any types of struggle. So creating adaptable services doesn't have to be a big deal, but it can mean a lot to a person that maybe can't be in a service that is traditionally in that congregation. So creating a culture of compassion is really great. The power of music that is in all congregations, whether it be in a pew type sitting or big bands or sitting, when I mentioned about the right side of the brain, that is the things that we retain. It is more likely that those are the things in the right side of our brain that we're going to lose last. And guess what's there? The music. Music is embedded in our memory between the ages of 8 and 20. So that leaves a lot of distance to play music that that person might have been listening to between those ages. If going to church has been a part of their routine, guess what comes in there? Religious songs, hymns. Nursery rhymes work really well. You can put different words to nursery rhymes, and that works well. So sometimes when words fail people, music speaks a whole lot more. We have seen that people that maybe can't walk or need wheelchair assistance, maybe don't speak as clearly. When we put music on, we've seen people get up and dance and sing. Um, that is really prevalent in the movie of uh, gosh, it just left me. Alive Inside. I'm so sorry. Alive Inside. We could see Henry just shine when music was placed on his headphones. This is another part of Dementia Friendlies that is the right thing to do. We leave you with a sticker that just says Dementia Friendly. That means that some of the people, some of the core people in your membership will have some skills to be able to recognize if someone is struggling, and they may be able to redirect them somewhere else so that the care partners can still stay for the service, or they're just a little bit more forgiving. So this sticker allows the community to see that you did the right thing, that you are working towards meeting the needs of the members. I really appreciate this time, and I think we can have some time for some questions if anybody has them. I don't know if Carol has seen anything in the Q&A, but I really, coping with dementia so enjoys being able to present this workshop to industries or to the community that really have an interest to maintain the sociability and the productivity of what a person still has left. And we're living a whole lot longer, so we have a lot of time to fill empty spaces of volunteering. And we know that that's something that is always needed in congregations and our community in general. Carol, do you have some questions?
Here we do have a couple of questions. Michelle's asking, how far away will you travel? Because she's located in Indiana.
Well, that's a good question. We do stay in Florida that way. We have gone out, and it's very possible. It's we don't have any boundaries, but there again, we do have Zoom available. We have utilized Zoom and Facebook Live to also in some churches to be able to put that out more. So there's always options. It's getting the information, it's allowing you to be uh, available to learn. Somebody is asking here about the left and the right brain. It's really interesting. The left side of our brain is where this disease starts to deteriorate first. And that, like I said, is our language skills. So you will start to see someone go, Carol, that thing, you know what I mean. You always, so we get those words that are really shuffled, and it's hard for our caregivers to know, do I step in, do I, you know then those words kind of start to spread into a sentence, and then they might hear something that would be, oh yeah, that was when I had my left knee surgery done, which could have been a decade ago. So it gets really jumbled. They're trying to still fit in, but they're working really hard. But what is really the plus side of this disease is what is retained. So the left side we lose, but the right side we retain. And what is really quite remarkable is the music, is the rhythm, the creativity, the hymns, the rhythm. It's the dialogue of conversation. the going the back. There's a rhythm to that. What is really bad in the right side of the brain is what we see when a person is frustrated with what's not happening and easily coming from the left side of the brain. There's more frustration, there's higher anxiety. And when I can't find the word, what will happen is I will pull out a swear word. And this is where that becomes inappropriate for people to be out in the public. And what we want them to understand is they're looking for the word, they can't find it, but they got the attention. It's not great attention, but it's swear words. It's usually racial and ethnic type of bad language. But we have to focus on the music and the rhythm and the creativity. And it's absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
Brian has a question. He says, there's a woman in my community with Alzheimer's that keeps bringing me trash that she thinks my sister can use for her garage sale. I tell her I can't use it and she takes it back, and her daughters know that this is going on. How do I handle that?
You know, if we know that it's trash and she keeps doing it, it's part of her short-term memory. Now, this is a great tip. Let me give you an example. Somebody called me and said, my mother goes outside and she collects tree sticks and rocks and leaves and then brings them in the house. And it drives me absolutely nuts. She tells her to go outside, throw them away. And I said to her, do you have a garbage can outside? And of course, yes, of course I have a garbage can outside. The garbage can was black. Our folks with dementia can't see black. It's not a color that they recognize, but lime green is. So I said, that really bothers you that it comes in the house. Of course, it makes a mess. So what if she's coming in the same door? What if we painted that can a lime green and she could recognize that can was hers? So in this particular case, maybe if we had a lime green can outside, she just puts it in there and she feels as though she's putting it there. And you just say, thank you very much. I'll be happy to do that. And then you bring it back to the neighbor. What you're doing at that point is validating what she's doing has purpose. She doesn't understand, no, I don't, go back, go put it over there. So if we give her a place that is hers to deposit that stuff, and it may be good things that the daughter wants, we just empty that and bring it to the daughter and just let that lady know, thank you so much. You're so helpful. I really appreciate that. He may not even see her knock on the door then. She may put it right in there and leave. But we got to be careful because um, sometimes they will take things that really don't necessarily mean to be in the garbage. They could be taking good things from the house. So we just have to be mindful.
Meredith's asking if you could talk about the logistics of the webinar, like, or your presentation, like the cost and time and, however you do it.
Sure. We offer it free to all nonprofits. It's usually 2 hours. We don't require food. If you want food, if you want some drinks and snacks, that's perfectly fine. We don't use any PowerPoint. We do communication for the first hour, and then we do role play. We take questions. We really want to try and interact with the group. What is happening? What are the things that you're seeing? What are the struggles you're seeing? How can we help you problem solve? But what we want everybody to understand is that when a person living with change, brain change or any kind of change, we want them to understand that what you see is not the problem. It's what's happening prior to that we need to change. What got them here? What got the anxiety up? What got the frustration up? So we want to educate people on what are the signs, what are the things that are happening. So it's a free workshop. We have probably done this in 50 congregations around. Um, and we just enjoy it, try to bring different kinds of information and therapies that they can utilize. As I said to you earlier, we presented this to a congregation, and her son was autistic. And she was creating a sensory room that wasn't just for her autistic child, but could be utilized for a person with dementia also. So we can give you an overview. You can talk to your congregation, your ministries, whatever it might be, to make that decision. We meet with them if they need to, but it's all just 2 hours, whatever day you want. We do them on any day of the week. And that's it. We just like to get the information out and educate them.
Jane has said some of our congregation's members have only slight dementia but are anxious about it. Any ideas on how pastors and lay leaders can support them and help relieve their anxiety?
I mentioned earlier that a lot of our folks are very fearful. They do get anxious. Um, Sometimes they just need to know that you understand. Thank you for being here. I'm here for you. There may be a time that they are very lucid and clear, and then it just kind of dissipates. A lot of times they need reassurance. So if they are saying something to you, just politely repeating right back, so you're not feeling comfortable with this. Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah, I can understand that, but we're gonna be here for you. If we just keep allowing them to understand that we're going to walk with them, it's they feel a lot safer. When we have a person that is very anxious, sometimes taking deep breathing, just taking a breath with them a few times, and when they finally calm down, most people living with dementia have told me that they're afraid. They're really afraid, and it's that same notion or preconceived notions that we have about dementia. It's not an exciting thing to have, and we all know that it's not curable. So, reassuring them, validating, being there for them, maybe checking up on them.
Great. Linda asks, how do you keep the old friends engaged with the individual when it becomes harder to communicate, like in the old days? The tendency is to withdraw because they do not feel comfortable, like it is awkward for that friend. Their sociable world becomes smaller and smaller when that happens.
It's interesting. One of our caregivers was saying the same thing. She noticed that her husband was losing some verbal skills and was also losing connection with their daughter. So she happened to get conversation cards for adults. And the daughter will now not ask. What happens in conversation is we live in 2022, correct? But our person that is living with dementia might not be. So we have to figure out where they're at and go there. So, what these conversation cards or starter conversations were about was the daughter picked out and said, Dad, I was thinking about that red wagon that you did for me. And what do you think? And he says, Oh my God, that was the best time I could take you for. So it becomes a conversation that they are able to engage in. But this family has used these conversation starters cards. The other thing that we try to encourage people to do is go with a purpose. Don't just try to expect that that person is going to have a conversation with you. Go with a purpose. Even when you're visiting someone in a nursing home, maybe bring something with you. We have a library here in Citrus County. Our library system in Citrus County in the mid-June is going to start, and we've been a part of this. They've created compassionate care kits, and they're themed kits for reminiscence and memories for people living with dementia. They're checkable things. So maybe we come with, I'm going to use an example. I know that my partner, Ed, was 30 years in the CEO, 30 years as a CEO of American Motorcycle Association. If I know that about a person, I might come with a motorcycle magazine and say, I just picked this up. Have you seen this before? And now we start to have a conversation with something that they're more fluent in, not just about how the weather was last week. So try and figure out, that's where person-centered approach comes from. That's what we believe in. Finding out who the person was will give you what you need to do now, because that's where I'm more fluent and I can have a conversation much easier than talking about what's happening now.
Walter says, not a question, simply profound thank you for the very clear and affirming presentation. I'm eager to share possibilities for the 2-hour workshop with others.
I mean, this is just a great opportunity to be able to share a resource, because what we don't want to do, and I will tell you just a quick story about 2017, coping with dementia myself, was awarded a healthcare hero for community outreach for dementia. And I'm not going to give back my award. It's very special. It wasn't the award that is why I'm mentioning it. It is the fact that when people commented afterwards, they said, thank you for giving us a voice. So we don't want people to be isolated, as you just mentioned. We don't want that to happen. We don't want the caregivers to be isolated. We don't want people to be ashamed, because dementia is not something that they wanted in their life journey. So giving them a voice, but also giving them a safe environment will help with everything. I'm not sure my mate understands that he has dementia. Linda, it's not about whether or not that person assumes or has dementia. If you have actually gone through some diagnosis, you can actually go to a research company, get a free memory screening for both of you so that you're in this together. But after going through this 2-hour workshop, or any kind of our workshops, what we're trying to do is educate the person, the caregiver, to see the signs, to be more responsive to the changes. When that person will acknowledge that they have something going on, then you'll be there. You'll be ready. But you do not have to spend your time saying, you have dementia. This is why you're doing this. We don't care about that. We want to know, okay, we're having change. How are we going to work with that? What are we going to do? So we work with the care partners to understand the changes, how we adapt, and how we support.
Again, thank you so much, Debbie. And this has been wonderful content. Thank you again, Debbie.
Thank
and
you.
thank you all
Appreciate
for
it.
joining us today.